"It's only a movie," is a mantra that many of us secretly say to calm ourselves down during particularly terrible horror movies to prevent anxiety attacks. But what if the story the film is based on is real? In similar situations, we can try to persuade ourselves that the filmmakers are manipulating reality for dramatic effect and that the real tale is less gruesome than what is being portrayed on screen. And yes, typically that is the case. But not always. Number 10. Dead ringers. Imagine the look of deranged glee that spread across David Cronenberg's face when he read a New York Magazine article about the Marcus brothers, twin gynecologists who died simultaneously of drug overdoses in 1975. Cronenberg, of course, wildly embellishes their shared decline, using the case as a jumping-off point to examine male sexual anxiety, among other things, in the most skin-crawling, off-putting, distinctly Cronenbergian way possible. Number 9. The Birds. Although it hasn't held up as well as other Alfred Hitchcock classics, perhaps if more people were aware that in 1961, birds in the California coastal town of Capitola rebelled against humans, it would appear a little less absurd today. As a result of exposure to harmful algae, flocks of normally calm seagulls started flying into buildings and vehicles and puking up partially digested meals. Number 8. Snowtown. Hounds of Love, Wolf Creek, The Girl Next Door, and other contemporary movies are based on horrible acts of brutality, but few have the visceral ugliness of Justin Kurzel's portrayal of the barrel murders that shook South Australia in the 1990s. Kurzel's account of the 7 years beginning in 1992 during which a group of 4 men, led by John Bunting, committed a slew of horrific killings, primarily targeting homosexuals and pedophiles, spares little details. Although it's difficult to picture viewing Snowtown for amusement, it serves as one of the best tour guides ever created for seeing deeply into the darkest corners of humanity. Number 7. Open Water. Tom and Eileen Lonergan, 2 Americans, were unintentionally left behind on a group scuba diving excursion off the Great Barrier Reef in 1998. Filmmaker Chris Kentes makes an educated guess as to what ultimately happened to them: sharks, and lots of them. Their bodies were never found. It may be more of a well-executed nightmare than a full-fledged movie because it was made on a small budget, in real water, and with real live sharks, but as a distillation of a pervasively held irrational fear, it may be even more potent than Jaws. Number 6. 10 Rillington Place. John Christie, a modest postman who murdered at least 8 people, including his wife, and hid their bodies in the walls of his Notting Hill apartment in the 1940s and 1950s, is arguably second to Jack the Ripper as London's most notorious serial killer. Richard Attenborough gives a terrifying lead performance as Richard Fleischer, whose narrative of his murdering spree is a little-known true crime gem that the actor claims tormented him for a long time after. Number 5. Compliance. Although the occurrence that served as the basis for this independent thriller did not result in any deaths or carnage, it is nonetheless extremely unsettling and not without agony. An employee at a fast food restaurant in rural Kentucky was persuaded to strip search a coworker by a man posing as a police officer in 2004. This was the first of a string of humiliating incidents that quickly grew worse. Number 4. Poltergeist. With help from Steven Spielberg, who produced and perhaps even ghost-directed some of it, director Tobe Hooper successfully Spielbergized the contemporary haunted house film 3 years after the Amityville Horror, creating a horror classic. It also draws its inspiration from a real haunting, like Amityville. In the 1950s, the family hired a paranormal investigator to identify strange activities, including things moving by themselves and randomly popping bottles, and the bizarre case of the Herman House in suburban Long Island became a national media story. Number 3. The Conjuring. James Wan's wildly popular traditional horror series mostly plays like a joyous mash-up of genre clichés, but at its foundation, there's a true story, or at least, real people. The first Conjuring movie was based on Ed and Lorraine Warren's account of paranormal activity at a farmhouse in Rhode Island in 1971. Ed and Lorraine Warren were real paranormal investigators. Number 2. The Amityville Horror. This haunted house story experienced huge left-field success during the late 1970s horror craze following The Exorcist thanks to a marketing push emphasizing its purportedly authentic credentials. It describes the supernatural harassment endured by the Lutz family when they moved into a dilapidated Long Island home that had previously been the scene of a gruesome mass murder and is based on the J. Anson novel. Number 1. Zodiac. Anyone who has even a passing interest in true crime has heard of the Zodiac Killer, who terrorized San Francisco in the 1960s with a series of killings that have never been solved. Although he meticulously recreates a few of the murders, David Fincher's terrifying masterwork is more about the black hole the murderer created with the perplexing puzzles and coded messages he leaked to the media. That's it for today. Please like, share, and subscribe.